We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
And now I'd like to introduce Eric Gill, Secretary-Treasurer of Unite Here Local 5. We couldn't have done this without their team and their sound system and all their support, so please, a special round of applause for Mr. Eric Gill.
Aloha! I'm happy that my team was acknowledged because I am where I'm at only because of my team. And I was fortunate enough, I was asked to come speak here today because I was living in Washington in 1963. I was 8 years old, I was in 3rd grade, and my dad was in Congress. And when the speech was done, the Republicans had taken a civil rights bill and broken it into 30 parts, requiring 30 separate votes in order to stick all the Congress people in the room so they couldn't leave to join the many, many thousands of American people that were gathered on the mall in pursuit of civil rights and listen to Dr. King. But my dad and some others had the courage to defy the leadership and go out and share that moment and listen to the speech and notice and see the reaction of 100,000 people who came out that day to demand that this country live up to the ideals that it has always professed. And that moment created a huge momentum. It was both the product of momentum and created more momentum. And the politicians did respond. And we went on in the subsequent years to pass Title VI that declared racial inequality to be against the Constitution of the United States, to pass Davis-Bacon that protected American workers from the government undermining their standards of work, that passed the Great Society, the various different types of legislation, the Economic Equality Bill, all that passed because the politicians responded not just to that speech, but to thousands and thousands and thousands of American people that gathered there, that lent that speech the power of their presence and the power of their spirits. And that's what drove it. So I'm very happy to hear from our political representatives all the great things they're going to do. And I'm happy to hear from the judge about the great things that we did. And those are great things. But those things happened because American people stood up, and American people marched, and American people took lickings and got attacked by dogs, and American people were imprisoned, and American people struggled and sacrificed and fought and turned out in huge numbers on that day to say that we will not let these obstacles prevent us from having a just society. So everybody should remember that Dr. King did not do this by making speeches. Dr. King did not accomplish what he accomplished by standing on a rostrum and preaching. He did all those things. But he accomplished what he accomplished because thousands and thousands and thousands of people spent their waking hours organizing people. Those people didn't show up on the mall by accident. They were organized by people like you and me, people that never got to make a big speech, people that never did get recognition, people that worked tirelessly day in and day out to organize despite the lickings they were getting, the imprisonment they were facing. American people won that victory. And my dad went out on the mall to watch Dr. King's speech, not because he couldn't see Dr. King's speech in some other venue, but because Dr. King was speaking to 100,000 Americans gathered there. And that movement is what was important in achieving our gains, and that's what we have to remember. Because every gain that we've achieved is under attack as we speak. And this president did the right thing by coming out for equality in marriage for all Americans. That was the right thing. But let's remember where Dr. King went after that speech. Because after that speech, Dr. King realized that it wasn't enough just to have civil rights, that in order to have a just society, we also had to deal with the fact that our country was conducting unjust, predatory, imperial wars. And Dr. King came out against the Vietnam War for that reason, because it was one struggle and one fight. And let's all remember where Dr. King ended up, because he didn't stop at civil rights. He was killed in Memphis supporting the right of refuse workers to better their conditions by joining a union. So if we're going to remember Dr. King and the legacy of the March on Washington, we shouldn't just recognize where it came from. And yes, it came from the civil rights movement and dozens of years of hard struggle and basic organizing on the part of the people of America. But let's remember where he went. That civil rights is in itself not enough. That civil rights can't exist if we are denying the rights of people in other countries and using our power to do that. Civil rights cannot exist if we are denying people rights on the job and the rights to a fair wage and a decent future for their kids. Civil rights can't do it alone. Dr. King knew that. Dr. King died for that. So I came here today to scold you and scold myself. Because wouldn't this speech be a lot more effective in the real world if there were 5,000 people here instead of a couple hundred? And that's on us. Because if we're going to get 5,000 people here, we need to go and organize. It's not enough to watch TV and channel surf and write letters and send emails. Organizing means talking to real people, building real organization, just the way that Dr. King's supporters in the churches and in the community associations, all the people we've heard quoted today, that's what they did. They got the people out there to listen to Dr. King. Dr. King spoke their deepest thoughts and articulated it better than any one of us could have, but he articulated their wishes, their views, their dreams for a better society. If we want to live up to the legacy of Dr. King, we can't just fight for civil equality. We are fighting for it. I'm proud of that. And I wish the best for this legislation and for that movement. But let's remember, it's our country that is about to start a war with Syria. It's our country doing drone strikes in other countries against people that did nothing wrong. It's our country that has taken back rights against workers right now in this country, right now under this administration. It's not enough to be for just civil rights. You have to follow Dr. King to the conclusion, and you have to understand how he got there, both in 1963 when he made a speech, and as we moved through the process, he got there by thousands and thousands of people, building organization, building parish organizations, church organizations, community organizations, spending their lives uniting people, bringing them together so that we had organized base to do turnout to get 100,000 people. If we want to carry on Dr. King's legacy, organize, organize, organize. Thank you very much.